So Jaws the Revenge is one of my favourite thrillers of all time. I actually put it right up next to the original. I've always been a fan of how it takes the elements of paranoia and dread from the original and builds on them. In my opinion, Jaws 2 and 3 were kind of hit and miss. Jaws 2 is just more of the same with a teen slasher setting, while Jaws 3 tried to do something different by introducing the third dimension, but both resulting in being very bland at the end of the day. Where Jaws the Revenge presents an incredible psychological thriller plot as well as a wrap-up to the story that's just as good as how The Dark Knight Rises wraps up the whole Batman story that was established in those movies. So this movie is also the black sheep of the franchise. It deals with really heavy controversial themes and asks the hard-hitting questions that most movies are too scared to ask, in my opinion. But it's often criticized for daring to take the franchise off the realistic nature rails and put them onto a more supernatural biblical track. And to me it still holds up very well to this day. So let's get into it. An element of Jaws 2 and 3 that often leaves the audience a bit baffled is why does the shark come back every movie after it's been killed? There have been many a theory. Either Amity Island is just a hotspot for the rogue great white shark, or maybe each shark is a relative of the previous one that died. But what this movie explores is the latter. Everyone knows that just like the killer whale, great white sharks are very family-orientated creatures. When a member of a great white pod is killed off, then the rest of the family members will act on the killer, sort of like an underwater mafia. In the original film, Brody kills the shark, and then the remaining sequels chronicle the constant waves of revenge. But the waters become more muddied with Jaws 2. Brody kills another member of the shark family. My theory is the shark in the second movie is actually the son of the first shark. Which makes sense seeing as it mostly tries to kill teenagers in that movie, like more of its own age. And in Jaws 3 you have the main big shark, the mother and wife of the first movie's great white shark. And also in that movie is the youngest son shark who gets captured by the protagonist and then dies in a tank. This enrages the mother so much that she has to break into SeaWorld and cause havoc. And who's at the heart of that story? The two Brody sons. They also murder the mother at the end of the movie. And so the sharks to the Brody family become more complicated the more you think about it, which leads me to the shark in Jaws the Revenge. Now, which shark is this shark in the grand scheme of the great white family, you ask? Well, this isn't a shark at all. This is in fact a spiritual metaphor of the Brody family getting in too deep. It represents the challenge Martin Brody took on becoming the chief of police in this small oceanic town. It's the fear of the water that's constantly challenging him, but with all the great white blood in his hands, the sharks will always come back to haunt him, literally. The sharks have always returned to settle the score physically, but this time it had to be done spiritually. So Jaws 4 starts off with the funeral of Martin Brody after apparently dying of a heart attack. Now this is interesting. Since the shark isn't real and he dies off screen, the shark would have killed Brody telepathically, which plays into the rest of the movie later. The demon shark then kills off the youngest son, Sean, to which all of this scene would have just been in his head. The son may have just fallen out of the boat and drowned, or perhaps he also had a heart attack and crashed the boat. Then the older brother Michael begins seeing visions of the shark and develops a desire to chase it. But the only one who knows of the shark's spiritual vendetta is none other than the mother, Ellen Brody from the original. One of the great subtle details of this movie is how she has a telepathic link to the shark. How else do you explain her vivid nightmares of actually seeing the accurate details of the shark? She never physically sees the shark in any of the prior Jaws films. Therefore, it had to be a visual that the shark put in her mind. And this is why the shark's plan is so brilliant. The great white spirit tricks Ellen and the rest of the Brody family into going all the way to the Bahamas, which gives the characters a false hope at thinking they are safe because great white sharks don't like warm water. They prefer the cold, crushing depths of the ocean. And an often criticism of this movie is how did the shark swim all the way from Amity Island to the Bahamas before the Brody family and Alfred arrive in a plane? Well, it makes perfect sense. The shark isn't a physical, real fish. It shows up in the Bahamas at the same time because it's only in Michael and Ellen's heads. There are so many scenes proving just how smart the demon fish is, which I don't think a lot of people give this movie credit for. Now, to get into the brilliant evil plan of the shark, we're going to have to take a very close look at the first scene of the movie. So while doing a deep sea analysis of this movie, I reached a scene that I found very interesting. Now at first glance, the scene just seems like a very basic setup to getting Sean Brody out into the water to meet his demise. But when I kept watching the scene, something stuck out to me. When Sean Brody knocks off for the night, the secretary Polly then gets a phone call. Now whoever calls the station is never seen. Polly informs him that there's a piece of wood stuck in a channel marker. When Sean tries to shrug it off and go home, he is then informed that no one else can move the piece of wood. The Coast Guard is busy, Lenny, presumably another deputy, is out cow tipping, and all the inhabitants of the island are at the Christmas festival. Polly can't move it on her own because she's on phone duty. So finally Sean Brody agrees to go move the dock pile as well as meet his demise. Now after rewatching the scene again and again, I was left with a big question. Who rang the station? Who knew to ring at the exact moment knowing that Brody was just about to go home for the night and also everyone else was busy? Well, after seeing how the rest of the film plays out, the only conclusion I came up with is that the shark itself rings the police station. The shark is the only one not attending the Christmas festival and knows how important the channel is when fishermen return in the morning. If a marker has a bit of driftwood stuck in it, then it's going to be a problem in the harbour for like 2, perhaps even 3 minutes. So this has been my theory for the longest time, and whenever I discuss it with my fellow filmmaker friends, they always laugh like I'm telling a joke, until, after doing a lot of research, I actually found a deleted scene from Jaws the Revenge, and my theory was proven 100% right. Here's the scene.
Good night, Polly.
Amity Police Department. Hold it! There's an old dock pile and drifting in the channel. Maybe it'll just keep on drifting till it goes away.
It can't. I stuck it in, it's stuck in a channel marker real good.
It's stuck on a channel marker.
Good night, Polly.
Don't let him leave. I ate the Coast Guard and the wood needs to be cleared before the fishermen come back. Fishermen can't fish if there's a big old piece of wood in the water. You understand?
Hold it! Coast Guard's busy and has to be cleared before the fishermen come back.
Where's Lenny?
Out to Ben Master's place. Cow tipping.
Cow tipping?
Claims kids come by at night and tip over sleeping cows. They're not giving milk.
Okay, I'll take care of it.
Deputy Brody will take care of it personally.
Ah, yes. Good. Good. This time it's personal.
Call home, tell him I'll be late.
Uh-huh.
Cow tipping.
Cow tipping. What an asshole.
So there you go, the shark rang the police station. And I'm actually surprised they cut this from the film, maybe just to not spell it out for the audience, but this scene was a find. I really like the touch of holding the rag over the phone receiver, like it's perfect. It would have distorted the shark's voice enough that Polly wouldn't be able to recognize who it is. You can even see the inspiration from this movie's intro scene in the 2017 horror movie It, specifically the scene where Georgie is taken in the sewer. While sitting in the cinema, I couldn't help but notice some obvious lifting of imagery. Although a yellow raincoat could be a homage, yellow is a very standard colour for raincoat, and it was also featured in the 1990s It movie. But I noticed the redesigned monster mouth on the Pennywise character now features rows and rows of teeth. Very reminiscent of a great white shark with multiple rows of teeth. However, in the 90s movie, Pennywise just had a regular one row of monster teeth. There's also flowing water in the foreground of It, to which in Jaws the Revenge, the Brody son is completely surrounded by water. And to my shock, Georgie has his arm bitten off. Now, I'm unfamiliar with the It novel, so if it's in the book that he gets his arm bitten off, then sure, the reference is there, but it's unseen in the 90s movie. So, I think it's a bit blatant. Yellow raincoat, shark teeth, water, and also having your arm bitten off, covered in blood, and screaming. Now, I enjoyed 2017's It for the most part, but like, come on. The whole floating tagline, but even in Jaws the Revenge, the shark floats way more. Like, there are so many shots where Jaws is actually above the water. Even the infamous POV shots spend more time above the water. I have nothing against the movie It, but yeah, it's just not as good a shark film as Jaws of Revenge. Now, a really incredible Easter egg in this movie is they actually have a scene with the ghost of Quint trying to communicate with Ellen Brody. But to those who don't know where to look for it, they miss it completely. In the scene where Michael is swimming through the wrecked ship, the ship is theorized to be the USS Indianapolis wreck that Quint talked about in the original Jaws, but that's another video in itself. There's a section of the ship where Michael is swimming through, and if you look at the very left of screen, you can sort of make out... Oh, April Fools, everyone! Bloody gotcha! Yeah, I grew up with this movie. I've always thought it was stupid, but I don't hate it that much. That being said, it's a completely ridiculous movie. Oh yeah, Deep Blue Sea is a better movie than this. Deep Blue Sea is the second best shark film ever made. Everything else is just garbage that's polluting the ocean. This movie is so ridiculous, the only redeeming factor is Michael Caine. Special thanks to Please Rewind for voicing Bruce the Fourth. Go subscribe to his channel, we have a lot of similar opinions on stuff, but he covers way more topics than I do. Be sure to like and subscribe, share, follow the Facebook, Twitter, we got those, we got all the social medias, Instagram, and if you have an Oh My God Boys It's the Nun t-shirt, you should totally like Facebook or tweet your shirt in, and it may or may not go into a future video. Ooh, what could that be about? Anyway, have a happy April Fools everyone, and we'll catch you next time. Quadrifex suit! I have nothing against the movie It, but yeah, it's just not as good a shark film as Jaws of Revenge. Fuck. Fucking so stupid.